The Book of Philemon. Receive Onesimus, your runaway slave, back as a brother. Philemon is a short letter written by the Apostle Paul to a man named Philemon. The letter is only 1 chapter long and consists of 25 verses. The letter begins with a greeting from Paul, Timothy, and a man named Epaphras, who Paul says is a fellow prisoner. Paul then goes on to express his gratitude for Philemon and his love for all the saints. The main purpose of the letter is revealed in verses 8 to 9, where Paul requests that Philemon forgive a man named Onesimus, who is described as a runaway slave who has now become a believer in Christ. Paul urges Philemon to receive Onesimus back as a brother in Christ, rather than as a slave. Paul promises to take responsibility for any debts owed by Onesimus, and expresses his hope to visit Philemon in person. The letter ends with Paul sending greetings to several other believers, and expressing his desire for grace and peace to be with them all. Exegesis by sections and verses. Verses 1 to 3. Greetings and desire for grace and peace. Paul identifies himself as the author of the letter and greets Philemon, along with Apphia and Archippus. He also expresses his desire for grace and peace to be with them. Verses 4 to 7. Paul's thanks for Philemon's love and fate. Paul thanks God for Philemon and his love for all the saints. He also mentions how he has heard of Philemon's faith and love for Christ. Verses 8 to 16. Paul's request for forgiveness and reconciliation with Onesimus. Paul requests that Philemon forgive Onesimus, and receive him back as a brother in Christ. Paul describes how he has become close to Onesimus, who is now a believer in Christ. He promises to take responsibility for any debts owed by Onesimus, and expresses his hope to visit Philemon in person. Verses 17 to 22. Paul's encouragement to welcome Onesimus as a brother. Paul urges Philemon to welcome Onesimus back as a brother, and to receive him as he would receive Paul himself. He also mentions how he is confident that Philemon will do what is right, and even reminds Philemon of what he owes Paul. Verses 23 to 25. Final greetings and final blessings. Paul sends greetings from several other believers and expresses his desire for grace and peace to be with them all. Overall summary. Philemon is a letter from Paul to a man named Philemon, in which he requests that Philemon forgive his runaway slave, Onesimus, and receive him back as a brother in Christ. Paul promises to take responsibility for any debts owed by Onesimus and expresses his hope to visit Philemon in person. The letter is a beautiful example of how the gospel can transform relationships and bring about reconciliation.